This week we're going to use the video as your notes. I would recommend you get a piece of paper, write down any of the formulas I give you, try and write down the example problems, and then you're going to be able to use those when you're doing the practice problems as a reference. We're going to look at the area of the sector of a circle. So when we are looking at the area of a circle, remember our formula for that is pi r squared. So if we were looking at this circle, we would say, oh, the radius is 5, so to find the area of the whole circle, I would just put 5 in there and calculate. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look just for the area of a sector of a circle. So that would mean, like for this case, it would just be this area in here. So if I wanted to find just the area of this, I need to pay attention to this angle measurement. If this is 110, and the entire circle all the way around is 360. To find the portion or the proportion of just this part to the total, I would take 110 degrees and I would divide it by 360 degrees. So if I know what the portion of this circle is, then I'm essentially calculating a percentage. I'm going to multiply it by the total area to just get this little piece here. Okay, so what you want to write down in your notes for sure is the formula for the area of a sector. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this pi r squared and we're going to multiply this portion. So I'm going to call the central angle x degrees, and then I know I'm going to be dividing it by 360 degrees. So if I take my central angle and I divide it by 360, that gives me the portion, and then I'm going to multiply it by the total area of the circle. So let's do this one as an example. So I'm going to find the area of this sector right here. So using my formula, I see my angle, the central angle is 110, and I'm going to multiply that by pi, and then I'm going to multiply that by the radius squared, so that's 5 squared. And then I'm going to divide the whole thing by 360. I'm going to show you an example of how to put this into Desmos. What we're going to find is that our answer is 24. I have feet on here, so we would say 24 feet squared. That would be the area of that sector. And now I'm going to show you how to do it in Desmos. To share with you how to put this problem into Desmos. So you're going to go to desmos.com. You want to use parentheses. So our angle is 110. We are going to multiply that by, now here is where if you want to use pi, the actual number for pi, you're going to, in your keyboard, click on that. And then of course, this thing is right in the way. You're going to click on pi. In some of the problems, you also it will tell you specifically use 3.14. So if that's the case, do that. Okay, so I want to say times pi, and then I want to do times r squared. So in this case, I say times my radius is 5. And then in that keyboard, I'm going to choose this a squared, and that's going to square whatever my number is. And so then I want to put another parentheses, and then I'm going to divide the whole thing by 360. And I see my answer is 23.99. So we're going to round it up to 24. So we're going to use a formula we just talked about, and we're essentially going to find the entire area of this sector, and then we're going to subtract out the area of just that little sector right here for this smaller circle. And then that'll give us the larger one. So if you want to pause the video, you can go ahead and write the diagram down so you have it as a reference when you do the practice problems. All right, so let's go ahead and start. So the first thing I want to do is I kind of want to just look at this big thing as like a big piece of pie. I want to find the area of this whole section here. So I'm just going to kind of refer to that as the larger portion. And I know that my central angle for this whole thing here is 50 degrees. So I'm going to take 50 degrees and then I'm going to multiply it by pi, and then my radius for this section here is AC, which is 6. So I'm going to take 6 squared, that's my radius squared. I'm going to divide it by 360. When you put it in the calculator, it ends up being 15.7. So this whole section here is 15.7. So now I want to figure out, if I just focus in on this smaller circle, I have another just sector right here. It still has a 50-degree central angle, but I'm going to go ahead and calculate that. So I have 50 degrees here. I'm going to multiply it by pi, and then my radius for this smaller circle is 4 units. So I'm going to put 4 in for the radius, square it, and then divide everything by 360. When I do this, this ends up being 6.99 something, so we're going to just go ahead and round that to 7. All right, so that means that this large piece of the pie here is 15.7. This small kind of piece of the pie on this circle is 7. So if I take this larger one, 15.7, and I subtract the smaller one, 7, then that will give me my remainder, which is that orange section, 8.7, and we're just going to call it units squared. For our next problem, you're going to want to go ahead and pause this and try and draw this out as well. We want to find the area of the shaded region. So the shaded region is going to be the orange part, and we have a square. Each side is 12 centimeters, and we want to just figure out what this orange part is. So if I can figure out the area of the entire square, that would be a good starting point. So the square area is just going to be 12 squared. So that's 144, and we said centimeters, so centimeters squared for the entire thing. So what I basically need to do is I need to be able to subtract out these little pieces here. So these are all the midpoints, which means that all of these should be the same. I know when I'm drawing it by hand, it's not going to look like that exactly. But if we think about this little rounded area here, if I think about it as a circle, what I have is a right angle right here, and then I have this arc that I can use, and I can figure out what the area of that shaded sector of the circle is. So I'm going to take my formula, so this is for this circle part or segment, I'll say. So we are going to take, well actually why don't we say instead of segment here, the sector. So I'm going to take my formula again, I'm going to take 90 times pi times, now I need a radius. So the side of the square is 12, that's the midpoint, so that makes that a 6, so that means that's my radius. So 6 squared, and then I'm going to divide it by 360. So actually for this problem, I wanted to do 3.14. I'm going to do that instead of putting pi in the calculator. All right, my answer then for that little corner piece is 28.3. So that means then that this is 28.3, that would be 28.3, that's 28.3, and that's 28.3. So in order to find the area of the shaded part, I want to take my total, which is 144, and then I want to subtract 4 of those 28.3s. So 4 times 28.3. And when you put that in your calculator, you're going to get 30.8, and then it's centimeters squared would be the area of the orange part. For the last problem, we are going to find the area of this entire composite shape here. So we have a rectangle, and then we have half of a circle. So we want to look at the rectangle first. And we're going to take length times width, so that would be 5 times 7, that's going to be 35 feet squared. And then for the semicircle here, we want to take the full area of the circle, so that would be pi r squared. So we do need to figure out what r is here. If all the way across is 5, if I put a point right here in the center, that would mean that this is 2.5, so that becomes our radius. And so I'm going to say pi times 2.5 squared. That gives me the area if I was looking at the entire circle. And so I want to divide that by 2 because I only have half of it. And that ends up being 9.8 feet squared. So then to determine the total area, I'm just going to add them together. So I take 35 plus 9.8, and my final answer is 44.8 feet squared. All right, and that's our last problem for the day. So go ahead and use these example problems to then do the practice problems that I have in the apply section. And those are in the week 5 Google practice problem slide.